Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So right now in the UN, there's a battle going on with regards to the Syria chemical weapons and the response of the United Community, meaning what are the states or what are the other member countries to do. The United States has been putting one resolution that Russia will vote down. Russia will put up a resolution that the United States will vote down. They're essentially a stalemate. The Russian foreign minister has just said something extremely interesting, though. And he said it on a grand stage, not, somewhere in the corner of the internet, some, unregulated corner of the internet. No, the Russian foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, in the UN right now, is saying that this is a false flag and that Moscow has undeniable evidence or irrefutable evidence that it's staged. That's what he's saying. Now, the United States has just said, oh, chemical weapons, we must do something. France, chemical weapons, we must do something. The UK, chemical weapons, we must do something. Now, both of those lapdogs, by the way, said, we defer to the action of the United States. Lapdogs. And the UK should be ashamed of itself. Should be ashamed of itself. Germany, Italy, and I think it was one other country, we don't want to get involved in this. We don't want to destabilize that part of the world. We're not involved. Essentially, France, the UK, and America. The same countries that bought you the failure of Libya, where they're selling slaves. They want to do it again. Listen to the beginnings of this. He's just going to say what I said, but sometimes I think the person saying it gets it across better than me just recounting what took place.
Moscow has solid evidence that the alleged chemical attack in Duma in Syria was staged.
We have undeniable evidence that this was yet another staged attack that involved intelligence agencies of one of the countries that is rushing to spearhead a Russophobic campaign.
A Russophobic campaign. And isn't that what has taken place? A Russophobic campaign. Trump and Russia, Trump and Russia. Okay, we don't have anything for Trump and Russia. But we have Facebook ads or Twitter ads. Doesn't matter. Hillary Clinton had $1 billion. She lost. Trump and Russia, we have something to hang on to, even though nothing to do with anything. The question is he right? Is he right? This is The Guardian. It's giving a series of events of what's taking place today. Sergei Lavrov claimed Moscow had irrefutable evidence that the suspected chemical attacks in Syria was staged. Now, United Nations war crimes investigators today condemned the suspected use of chemical weapons in Syrian town of Duma in eastern Ghouta and called for evidence to be preserved with a view of future prosecutions. You won't get evidence if you have missile strikes in that area. You won't get evidence. Is that hiding evidence? Is that what that is? Hiding the fact that there is no evidence? International chemical weapons experts were traveling to Syria to investigate all alleged gas attacks by government forces in Duma, which killed dozens of people. Well, you don't know if it was government forces. How do you know? And what's the point of them going if you already know that it's government forces? That statement makes no sense. Sounds like The Guardian has a disposition, even though it's stepping over itself. If international chemical weapons experts were indeed traveling to Syria to investigate an alleged chemical gas strike. Oh, I'm sorry. Fair enough. To be fair, they use alleged. I'm sorry. I'm being an asshole. I'm wrong. Completely wrong. Perpetrators of such attack must be identified and held accountable. We stress the imperative need to preserve evidence and call upon relevant authority to ensure no party tampers with suspected sites, objects, witnesses, or victims before international monitors and investigators are able to access the area. If I'm not mistaken, Russia has even said it would give its troops to assist as this kind of bodyguards as they go to these places to make sure that the weapons inspectors or the chemical weapons inspectors can do their jobs. I suspect that Russia would do that, seeing as is most likely Syria is not the culprit. he told the UN Security Council, Franco Delat gives a speech during the UN Council meeting on suspected chemical weapons. And deciding to once again use chemical weapons, the regime has reached a point of no return. France will shoulder its responsibility to end the intolerable threat to our collective security. It's not a threat to your collective security. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? At what point did France become on the hit list of Syria? At what point did Syria attack France? There is no point that Syria attacked France. So your collective security is not on the line, buddy. You're lying. You're lying in pursuit of a war. You're lying. And by the way, Francios, whatever your name is, how do you know that the regime has used chemical weapons if the weapons inspectors are traveling to Syria? How do you know? How do you know? How do you know? Not only does it not make logical sense, but you don't know. This just says the international chemical weapons experts were traveling to Syria to investigate an alleged gas attack by government forces in Douma. Alleged. Traveling, investigate. Those things are taking place now. That means that there is not the evidence there for you to even make that assertion, to even take the secondary premise that you need to do anything. This is why investigations are important. There are two very different views of the world here. One view makes no sense, and yet they asserted that the Syrian government did this, released some kind of chemical weapons. Okay, give me your evidence. Well, they're traveling there now, but we need to gear up for some kind of conflict. Where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? Now, Russia is saying we have irrefutable proof that this was fake. I asked the same question. What is that irrefutable proof? Where's your evidence? I just want to see evidence. I have all these assertions. Give me fucking evidence. You guys are actually talking about some military conflict, and both of you are talking about starting a goddamn world war. Can you at the very least produce something for me to hang my hat onto while you're blowing us to hell? Evidence is important. This is why evidence is important. Both of these guys can make all the assertions that they want. What matters is what's true, what's real. Evidence. They're trying to come up with a pretext to blow things to hell. Okay. The United States is engaged in a war of aggression. It will be the United States' fault if this blows up in a ball of glory. But nevertheless, if Russia is saying they have irrefutable proof, present it. I've yet to see it. I've seen assertions. I've seen the media talk about it. Those are assertions. And look, I am not even inclined not to believe you. I just want to see it. The story that the United States is making makes no sense. The story that the rest of the media is accepting makes no sense. So if you're giving me a counter narrative that makes more sense, okay. But you have to at least give it to me. Don't just tell me, show it. This is why it is vital important to have investigations. Of course, opposing sides are going to have their own narrative of events. That takes place in politics in your own country. What is the politics in the United States? Republicans said this, Democrats said this. Who knows what the truth? I'm saying the same dynamic, it takes place in international politics. Sometimes both countries are lying. Sometimes both countries are telling the truth. Sometimes both countries are bending the truth in a way that suits their ends. In this case, we have two very different, literally opposing viewpoints of the world. These viewpoints cannot stand together side by side. These viewpoints are in direct contradiction to one another. Either they faked it or they didn't fake it. Fact is, the Western powers has no evidence of anything. They've just asserted. Moscow's saying they have evidence. I'm open. Evidence needs to be the thing that makes the choice when you have these two opposing forces that have dogs in the hunts and reasons to lie. That being said, the logical conclusion or the logical deduction, let me say it that way. If Assad wants to stay in his seat, releasing chemical weapons is not the way to do it. And it is a strange proposition that I am to believe that he is such a maniac and such an animal that he just wants to murder people to such a degree. He's bloodthirsty. I'd just like to see people die in chemical weapons. That's what you would have to believe. That he cares about that so much that he would do it even though it's against his strategic interests. Their narrative makes no sense. The narrative makes no sense. This is Duran talking about this. Give a little bit more context. Russia has irrefutable evidence of chemical attack in Syria was staged. Lavrov. The Russian foreign minister said that. Said the same thing. The Pentagon, on the other hand, admitted just the day before that they're still looking for actual evidence that the Syrian government was responsible for the alleged chemical attack and that they had been relying on social media reports. For the moment, Western governments attributing blame for the chemical attack to Assad governments are based on mainstream reports from outlets like the BBC, relying almost entirely on Islamic rebel groups that the activists and NGOs that operate within the territory. Essentially, organizations that are propped up by Britain and the United States are coming back saying, hey, the terrorists, the Syrian government did this. But all of the details that you're relying upon are from groups that are favorable to the terrorists. Why on earth are you going to believe what the terrorists are saying in news that benefits the terrorists? That's why you have investigations. That's why investigations matter. And it is sad. It is a sad, worrying development when France, the UK, and America say, fuck all the evidence. We don't need evidence. We are a world order into ourselves. And if it comes on TV, reality enough for us. The chemical inspectors are there trying to do a job. Will the United States, France, and the UK allow them to do that job? In fact is, it adds more credibility to what Russia's saying if these guys start bombings in ways that will destroy potential evidence. I don't know whether there was a chemical strike. Whether there was a chemical strike, whether it was staged, I have no idea. What I do know is it makes no sense from a logical standpoint. It makes no sense. So Russia's saying they have irrefutable evidence. At some point, Russia is going to have to release that irrefutable evidence. Just saying so is not enough to pass muster. On the positive side, though, this has been a media war. Like within the United States, it's been saturated. I would imagine within Russia, it's been saturated. Within countries in alliance with Russia in this way, I would imagine it's been saturated in the opposite direction. But there's been an intermediary, a between state, where this propaganda war has been going back and forth, where you could actually pull both sides and say, this is what both sides are saying. Meaning there is, so in Bloomberg, in certain outlets like the Rand, it's been getting through that the story that the West is running with is faulty at best. That is positive. We are now waiting for the irrefutable evidence that Russia has. So we'll wait it with bated breath. But at this point, I have no idea what that evidence is. And up to this point, I'm not being able to find it. But they are asserting it at the UN Security Council right now, as we speak. So I'm not going to keep this one long. Let's see if anybody's here. Seems like the world is falling into he said, she said state of diplomacy, meaning we are on the brink of war, in my opinion. Winky to burn, bro. Winkle, I agree. Like, that's extremely worrying. I mean, ultimately, they've used these groups who are affiliated with us. These terrorists say that the Syrian government dropped these weapons on us. And the U.S. government says, okay, the terrorists said it. That's enough for us. Forget the fact that we're supporting the terrorists. So would we have a disposition that is in line with the terrorist groups that are trying to take down that government? Seeing as we're supporting those terrorist groups, yes. It is disingenuous to take the line of terrorists who we're affiliated with as being the word or giving that any credibility in this conversation, seeing as they have the ones that are the only ones that have anything to gain from this. But that is what is taking place. The actual investigators are going to Syria right now to do an actual investigation. Yet you have all these incriminations of that government when the investigation has never taken place. And what they've used for the previous assertions were bogus. They were bogus. So I will leave it at that. I don't want to keep this one long. Some of these videos I want to keep short because I want them to be snap bites for people to not have an excuse to dive in saying, what is he saying about Syria? My longer videos are for my audience, but right now I feel like, look, I guess my feeling is all my videos today will be demonetized. And I want to keep them short and bite-sized so the people who are looking at them, it would be worth it. I guess that's all I'm saying. I want it to be worth it where people look at it and say, okay, I can deal with a video that's like 10 minutes long for him to get his point across about why this is problematic. So if these are shorter, that's why. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, as always, pay. Thanks, guys.